Chapter 38. And so forth. Morning found the concessionaires within sight of Cheboksary. Ostap was dozing at the helm. Ippolit Matveyevich sleepily rowed through the water. The cold night had both of them shivering like gypsies. To the east, rosy buds were unfurling. Ippolit Matveyevich's pince-nez grew brighter. The oval lenses sparkled, reflecting both banks of the river in turn. A semaphore on the left bank was distorted in the double concave glass, as if it had a stomach ache. Blue domes of Cheboksary floated in Vorobyaninov's lenses like ships. The garden in the east expanded. The buds turned into volcanoes and began to erupt with lava of the finest confectionery colors. Birds on the left bank started a loud and raucous argument. The gold bridge of the pince-nez flashed and blinded the grandmaster. The sun had risen. Ostap opened his eyes and stretched, tilting the boat and cracking his bones. "Good morning, Kisa," he said, stifling a yawn. "I've come to you with greetings, to tell you that the sun has risen, that it has fluttered with hot light over something or other." "Doc," Ippolit Matveyevich announced. Ostap pulled out the guidebook and checked. "Judging by this, it's Cheboksary. Okay. We draw your attention to the beautifully situated city of Cheboksary. Kisa, is it really beautifully situated? Currently, Cheboksary has 7,702 residents. Kisa, let's abandon the chase for diamonds and increase the population of Cheboksary to 7,704. That would be very impressive. We'll open a TSHVO, and from this TSHVO, we'll have a guaranteed big slice of bread. Well, next, founded in 1555, the city has preserved several very interesting churches. In addition to the administrative institutions of the Chuvash Republic, there are a workers' faculty, a party school, a pedagogical technical school, 2 secondary schools, a museum, a scientific society, and a library. At the Cheboksary pier and in the market, you can see Chuvash and Cheremiss people, distinguished by their appearance. But even before the friends approached the pier, where one could see Chuvash and Cheremiss people, their attention was drawn to an object floating downstream in front of the boat. "A chair," Ostap shouted. "The administrator, our chair is floating away." Companions rowed up to the chair. It rocked, spun, dipped into the water, and then floated up again, drifting away from the concessionaire's boat. Water freely poured into its ripped-open belly. It was the chair that had been opened up on the Scriabin, and now it was slowly heading towards the Caspian Sea. "Hey there, buddy," Ostap shouted. "Long time no see. You know, Vorobyaninov, this chair reminds me of our life. We're also floating downstream. They try to drown us, we float back up, even though it seems like nobody's happy about it. Nobody loves us, except maybe the Criminal Investigation Department, who also doesn't love us. Nobody cares about us. If those chess enthusiasts had managed to drown us yesterday, all that would be left of us would be a single autopsy report. Both bodies are lying with their feet to the southeast and their heads to the northwest. The bodies have lacerations, apparently inflicted by some blunt instrument. The enthusiasts would have been hitting us with chessboards, obviously. A rather blunt instrument, I must say. First body belongs to a man of about 55 years old, dressed in a torn lustrine jacket, old trousers, and old boots. In the jacket pocket is an ID in the name of Konrad Karlovich, Count Michelson. There you have it, Kisa, that's all they would write about you. And what would they write about you? Vorobyaninov asked angrily. Oh, they would write something completely different about me. About me, they would write, the second body belongs to a man of 27 years old. He loved and suffered. He loved money and suffered from its lack. His head, with a high forehead framed by raven black curls, is turned towards the sun. His elegant feet, size 42 shoes, are pointed towards the northern lights. Body is clad in spotless white clothes, with a golden harp inlaid with mother-of-pearl on his chest and the notes of the romance Farewell, New Village. The deceased young man was engaged in wood burning, as evidenced by the ID found in his frock coat pocket, issued on August 23, 1924, by the Pegasus and Parnassus Handicraft Cooperative, number 86, 1562. They'll bury me, Kisa, lavishly, with an orchestra with speeches, and on my monument it will be engraved. Here lies the famous heating engineer and exterminator Ostap Suleiman Berda Maria Benderbey, whose father was a Turkish citizen and died without leaving his son Ostap Suleiman the slightest inheritance. The deceased's mother was a countess and lived off unearned income. Talking in this way, the concessionaires pulled up to the Cheboksary shore. In the evening, having increased their capital by 5 rubles by selling the Vasuki boat, the friends boarded the steamer Uritsky and sailed to Stalingrad, hoping to overtake the slow-moving lottery steamer along the way and meet the Columbus troop in Stalingrad. A glowing giant carried the companions down the river. They passed Mariinsky Posad, Kazan, Tetushi, Ulyanovsk, Sengele, the village of Novodevichy, and before evening on the second day of the journey, they approached the Zhigulai Mountains. 100 times in this novel, evening has fallen, the sun has set, and a star has shone, but never before in this novel has the evening been filled with such meekness and anticipation of great events as this one. The decks of the Uritsky filled with a crowd of passengers, orange in the setting sun. The low Zhigulai Mountains were powerfully green on the right side. Excitement gripped the souls of the passengers. Ostap, having miraculously made his way from his third-class cabin to the bow of the ship, pulled out the guidebook and learned from it that the journey along the Zhigulai Mountains was an exceptional pleasure. The steamer, Ostap read aloud, passes close to the shore, cutting through the shadows of the coastal peaks falling into the river. A thick carpet of greenery in various shades beckons the traveler to delve into the virgin depths of the forests, to enjoy the beautiful air, to admire the opening vistas and the mighty Volga, and to remember the distant past when disorganized rebellious elements. The passengers crowded around Ostap. Disorganized rebellious elements, powerless to reorganize the established social order, roamed here, terrorizing merchants and officials, who inevitably gravitated towards the Volga as an important trade route. No wonder popular memory still preserves many legends, songs, and tales associated with Yermak Timofeyevich, Ivan Koltso, Stepan Razin, and others who visited the Zhigulai Mountains. And so forth, Ostap repeated, enchanted by the evening. And so forth, the crowd groaned, gazing at the twilight outlines of Molodsky Kurgan. And so for RRTH, the ship's siren blared, calling out to the space, to the legends, songs, and tales resting on the peaks of the Zhigulai Mountains. The moon rose like a child's balloon. Devya Gora lit up. It was beyond human strength. From the depths of the ship came the stomach-churning strumming of a guitar, and a passionate female voice sang. From beyond the island to the fairway, on the expanse of the river waves, painted, Stenka Razin's boats sail. Sympathetic voices picked up the song. Enthusiasm seized the ship. Everyone remembered the distant past, when disorganized rebellious elements roamed here, terrorizing. The moon and the Zhigulai Mountains produced the usual and irresistible impression on the human soul. When the Uritsky passed by the two brothers, everyone was already singing. The guitar had long been drowned out. Everything was covered in thunderous roars. We're celebrating a ni-i-i-i-u wedi-i-i-ing. Tears of moonlight stood in the eyes of sensitive first-class passengers. From the engine room, drowning out the sound of the engines, came. He's ha-appy and drew you-you-you-unk. The second class, dreamily settled on the stern, added soulfulness. Behind them, a murmur is heard. He traded us for a woman. He only spent the night with he-er. Spent the night, spent the night, spent the night, Bald Mountain boomed in bewilderment. Spent the night, they sang in the third class as well. He himself became a woman by morning. At this time, the Uritsky had caught up with the lottery steamer. From a distance, one might have thought that a sailor's mutiny was taking place on the ship. There were groans, curses, and death rattles. It seemed that on the Skrabin, the barrels of rum had already been broken. The first and second-class passengers had been hanged from the yards, and the captain, with a fractured skull, was lying at the door with a sign reading Mutual Settlements Department. In reality, both the sailors and the passengers of the first, second, and third classes were singing the last verse with extraordinary thunder and expressiveness. Why are you devils so dejected? Hey you filka, devil dance. Let's strike up, bro-o-o-others, a lively one. And even the captain, standing on the bridge and not taking his eyes off Tsarev Kurgan, howled into the lunar expanses. Let's strike up, bro-o-o-others, a lively one. In memory of her soul. Her soul, sang the cameraman Polkin, shaking his mane and clutching the railings. Her soul, cooed Galkin, Palkin, Malkin, Chalkin, and Zalkind. Her soul, trilled the employees, whose vivacity on this fragrant evening was not confined to the bounds of official relations. And the captain, an old river wolf, wept like a child. For 30 years he had been piloting ships past the Zhigulai Mountains, and every time he wept like a child. Since he made no fewer than 20 trips during the navigation season, he had thus managed to weep 600 times in 30 years. Is any further proof needed of the irresistibility of the Zhigulai Mountains' sad beauty? Uritsky, having drawn level with the Skrybin, was at the center of a song cyclone. The passengers were collectively throwing the Persian princess overboard. Local ships filled with local residents who had grown up within sight of the Zhigulai Mountains rushed up. Nevertheless, the local residents were also singing Stenka Razin. Have you not seen a giift? From the dawn ko-o-o-asek. Buoys glowed, the rectangular windows of the ship's salons were reflected in the water, and the lanterns of the local ships blinked. Songs thundered, and it seemed that a ball was being held on the river. Uritsky easily overtook the lottery steamer. The concessionaires looked at their first floating haven with hope. There in the lights, among the prohibitive inscriptions and official bustle, in the director's cabin, stood 3 chairs. The Skrybin slowly receded, and its lights were visible all the way to Samara. In Stalingrad, the concessionaires waited for the Columbus Theater for 2 weeks. During this time, they several times reached the most dire straits. If it hadn't been for the Bureau of Love Letters established by the great schemer in the market, the concessionaires would have starved to death. By the time the theater arrived, the Bureau had already acquired an extensive clientele among the housemaids, and Ostap was beginning to fear a visit from the police. They had to live modestly, however, saving money for possible expenses related to the seizure of the chairs. Skrybin arrived to the sounds of an orchestra in early July. The friends met him, hiding behind boxes on the pier. Before unloading, the last lottery draw was held on the ship. Large prizes were drawn. The chairs had to be waited for about 4 hours. First, the Columbus troop and lottery employees poured out of the ship. Among them stood out the radiant face of Persitsky. Sitting in ambush, the concessionaires heard his cries. "Yes, I'm going to Moscow immediately. I've already sent a telegram. And do you know what it said? I'm rejoicing with you. Let them guess." Then Persitsky got into a rental car, having first inspected it from all sides and felt the radiator, and drove away, accompanied by cries of hurrah, for some reason. After a hydraulic press was unloaded from the ship, the Columbus stage props began to be carried out. The chairs were carried out when it was already dark. The Columbus troop loaded into 5 horse-drawn vans and, shouting cheerfully, rolled straight to the train station. "It seems they won't be performing in Stalingrad," said Ippolit Matveyevich. This puzzled Ostap. "We'll have to go," he decided, "but how will we afford to go? However, let's go to the train station, and we'll see what happens there." At the train station, it turned out that the theater was going to Pyatigorsk via Rostov-Mineralny Vody. The concessionaires had enough money for only one ticket. "Do you know how to ride without a ticket?" Ostap asked Vorobyaninov. "I'll try," Ippolit Matveyevich said timidly. "The hell with you, better not try. I'll forgive you one more time. So be it, I'll ride without a ticket." Ticket was bought for Ippolit Matveyevich in a third-class hard-seat car, in which the former leader arrived at the station Mineralny Vody of the North Caucasus Railway, decorated with oleanders in green tubs. Vorobyaninov stepped onto the stony platform of the station, and trying not to catch the eye of the Columbus troop getting off the train, began to look for Ostap. The theater had long since left for Pyatigorsk, settling into brand-new summer cottages, but Ostap was still not there. He arrived only in the evening and found Vorobyaninov in complete disarray. "Where have you been?" the leader groaned. "I'm so exhausted." "You're the one who's exhausted, riding around with a ticket in your pocket. And I'm not exhausted then. It wasn't me then who was kicked off the buffers of your train in Tikhoretskaya. It wasn't me then who sat there for 3 hours like a fool, waiting for a freight train with empty Narzan bottles. You're a pig citizen leader. Where's the theater?" "In Pyatigorsk." "Let's go," I scribbled something along the way. "The net income is expressed in 3 rubles. It's not much, of course, but it's enough for the first purchase of Narzan and train tickets." The summer train, rattling like a cart, dragged the travelers to Pyatigorsk in 50 minutes. Past Zimeyka and Bishtau, the concessionaires arrived at the foot of Mashuk. "How does that sound?"